Sewell Newhouse, resident at the Oneida community in New York after 1849, Newhouse wanted trapping in his traps to spread like gospel in the wilderness. In 1869, he wrote in the Trapper's Guide that his trap, going before the axe and the plow, forms the prow with which ironclad civilization is pushing back barbaric solitude, causing the bear and the beaver to give place to the wheat field, the library, and the piano. The trap was sprung years ago and forgotten. I don't mention Sewell to Richard, gone ahead. I follow his tracks and the dog's, my wet, cold hands buried in my pants pockets, trying to remember the afternoon when I was 19 and clearing trails in the Teton National Forest with an old man named Bill Daniels, who jumped suddenly off his horse and ran to the foot of a tree where, cursing the loss of memory, he dug up a bear trap he'd set in 1921, unsprung. Number 6 Newhouse, rusted open, big enough to trap a truck tire. Walking with my hands in my pockets, recalling the morning I slipped off a log's frosty back and ripped the pockets out of my parka trying to get my hands free to break the fall, and didn't make it. The woods are soaked Pacific Northwest Douglas fir-dominated rainforest. 80 inches of rain a year here. When David Douglas came into this country in 1825, his backers in London at the Horticultural Society thought his was a long shot to bring back to Europe the first collection of Pacific Northwest flora. Slight of build, chronically shy, he was determined, exact, and as self-contained in the woods as Mercury. The Indians thought highly of him, took him to see the fabled sugar pines, with cones as long as a man's arm from elbow to knuckles. When I walk in the woods in winter, damp but warm in wool clothes, I think of him huddled over his fire each evening, hand-drying each of the day's specimens to preserve them, just as a man who fell in a creek might hold his notes up to the sun to dry them, that earnest. When Douglas returned to London in 1827, his herbarium became the celebration of English naturalists. His second trip, farther north, fared as well, until the whole collection went to the bottom of the Fraser River in a nameless rapids, as quick as popping a button on a shirt. Richard is waiting at a rock outcrop. We back up like bears into a shallow cave and eat, watching the woods, listening for spruce grouse. The dogs sleep. Richard is the only man I know who's read all of Samuel Pepys. In the cave there are certain mysteries, the presence of an animal once here, last winter, no sign of which can I finally discover, but I enjoy the sense of certainty. I look up to find both dogs staring at me. We step back into the woods and turn upslope for the ridge. We climb, our hair damp with rain, our foreheads beaded with sweat, breathing like bulls. John Muir, God, how you went on, as detached as a raven, alone, barely provisioned, as indomitable as a wolverine in those Sierra snows to find the winter life of the water ouzel. The bird remains largely unknown now, 60 years after you're dead and gone, and your ashes scattered. We reach the top blowing like whales, unable to see anything in the fog. I run my hands down the flanks of a slick-skinned madrone and wonder at all the things I think I've touched and haven't, while the fog condenses on the madrone where my fingers have passed. In summer, we've lain up here like wolves watching the country below for deer, after having eaten down there at the creek, yellow violets, sorrel, and cress, like deer. We come downslope as graceless as boulders. Beneath a cover of barren alder branches at the creek's edge, in the failing light in our dark clothes, we hide, still for a long time, the dogs used to this, asleep back in the trees, before the birds come back. Mergansers skim the surface of the creek like skipped stones headed up water. That river monk, great blue heron, meditating behind the lightning strike of his beak in a downwater pool. Long moments, and then we hear scream but do not see an osprey, who has seen us, and the heron lifts as slowly as a dirigible and evaporates downstream, and we go too. We cross the creek at a familiar place.